Philando Castile was just murdered. How could this not be addressed the following Sunday? The sermon and the liturgy invited our congregation to lament racial injustice and police brutality. I never thought I'd see a counter protest in a worship service. An older white couple who were long-standing members of the church stormed out of the worship service, stormed out in protest. And they were not the last to leave the church. I discovered later that this same couple organized a secret meeting after the announcement of my appointment to their church to vote on whether or not they were ready for a black pastor. We had interviewed with these people. They had given my family advice. They held our newborn son. I cared for them during the highs and the lows of their lives. Was it all real? Honestly, I didn't know what to believe. This experience was enough to break my family and me. I was ready to quit, to give it all up. A few months after this experience, I found myself at the historic Highlander Center, a place of retreat and training for Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, and many civil rights luminaries. It was as if the ancestors knew the place that my body needed to stand to receive from their deep wisdom and strength, and to receive their call. A call to reconstruct the church as the Jesus movement, to bring healing for myself, for the church, and even for the country. To reconstruct the church as the Jesus movement would mean building liberation outposts on the edges of the institutional church, where the oppressed steal away, where they find refuge, and where allies become accomplices, where both return to the world as revolutionaries. I couldn't shake this vision. It was like fire shut up in my bones. So I began to share it with my inner circle, my family, and a white family that we had been doing life with. And they believed it. Belief is what gives prophetic vision its legs. So we uprooted our lives to test this vision in Greensboro, North Carolina. What emerged is the Good Neighbor movement, a church at the intersections of liberation theology, faith-rooted organizing, prophetic spirituality, and monasticism. We are a multiracial, Black-led, queer-affirming network of small communities called city villages that form disciples of revolutionary love, to be bold, become, be still, and to belong.
What a bold vision for practicing community Brandon just shared with us. They uprooted their lives to not simply do something bold, but to be bold. Being bold is a space of connection that's public, and it invites us to take action, sacrifice, and speak truth to power. We witness boldness in the life and ministry of Jesus in Luke 4 when he acknowledged his call to ministry, spoke prophetic truths, and was nearly thrown off a cliff. Jesus was bold. In 2005, I began my career in higher education. I worked for my alma mater, Western Kentucky University, for 10 years before relocating to Greensboro, North Carolina in 2016 to serve in an assistant director position with one of the 17 UNC system schools. While in my position, I was deeply harmed by a toxic work environment and culture that failed to acknowledge and honor difference, by those in leadership who actively chose to ignore wounding practices that negatively impacted others. My life felt like it was in shambles. And after 15 years in higher education, I didn't know what to do, but I knew I had to do something. I knew I had to be bold. So in an act of protest and resistance to inaction, I wrote an open letter to campus and I resigned from my position after serving at that institution for just 2.5 years. This was not a part of my plan. How many of you all are familiar with the singer and songwriter Tracy Chapman? Yeah. In 2005, she wrote a song called Change. You may be familiar. She asked a question in Change that gets to the heart of what it means to be bold. If everything you think you know makes your life unbearable, would you change? Acting with boldness invites us to change. Change can feel dark and uncertain, messy and unorganized. But change invites us to become.
Bold action is made possible through relationships of solidarity. In the context of solidarity, we are invited to become something together that we can't be apart. The Southern African principle of Ubuntu is relevant. I am because we are. One person that created this sacred space of Ubuntu for Lauren and I is Karen. Through her coffee and art shop, the People's Perk. I have on the shirt. The Perk is a place of welcome for all, but especially for the leftist radical types in our city. As a Black woman leftist elder, Karen could uniquely provide hospitality for the marginalized in our city. Everyone describes the shop as a sanctuary. Karen was one of the first people I tested the vision of the Good Neighbor movement with. She loved it, and she gave me tough feedback, which made it stronger. So I figured I'd ask her to join the team. She responded, "I'm not a joiner, Brandon." It was a blow to my ego, but it was a balm to my soul. Solidarity is not uniformity. Solidarity is when people bring who they truly are to become something new.
And to become something new, we must sit with who we are, with who we've been, and who we long to be. We must be still. When we enter this space of connection, it gets personal, y'all, and contemplative. As I sat with myself after leaving higher ed, I grappled with the impact my experiences were having on my life. Although I took bold action to become who I felt our Creator had called me to be, my confidence in my own abilities was shaken. My self-esteem was low. And I needed God to show up and connect me with a community that would hold me accountable to the healing I needed. I soon discovered my people: Brandon, Erica, Karen, Raquel, Josette, Allie, Aldisha, Indira, Susan, Shawnee, Andrew, Kelly, and so many more. Folks who were committed to journeying alongside each other, alongside me, and committed to holding each other accountable.
But accountability is tricky. For it to not feel like harm, people have to feel like they belong. To belong is to share in vulnerability, to live radical authenticity and radical care. What struck me the most about the All Lives Matter counter-protest in that worship service wasn't the racism. Sure, the racism hurt deeply. But what it exposed that was deeper was my own loneliness. I did not truly know those people, and they did not know me. We showed up to an hour meeting every week with songs and words and a format that kept us distant from one another, that kept us from belonging, from really seeing and knowing each other. I had to face that the way I had been trained to do church produced more concealment, betrayal, and neglect than disciples. And it turned me into an expert, loyal to an institution, always keeping a distance from the lady. In order to belong, to not waste away in loneliness, I needed loyalty with the very people who would be in the trenches with me, to call together not only servants, but friends. In Good Neighbor Movement, in Lauren, I have found a community of comrades. We walk and march and pray and protest and serve together. We forgive and listen and mourn and celebrate and set boundaries with one another. We belong to one another.
Practicing community with Good Neighbor Movement represents God showing up in my life to speak to the longing I've always had, a call to ministry. I'm a preacher's kid from Kentucky. I'm a Black, queer woman of faith. I'm a survivor, an overcomer. I am a commitment to reclining in the wholeness and holiness of God's unrelenting love and inviting others into that love. I am called. Like a long, lonely stream, I keep running towards my dream. I keep moving on. I keep moving on. Like a branch on a tree, I keep reaching to be free. I keep moving on. I keep moving on. 'Cause there's a place in the sun where there's home for everyone, where my poor restless heart has gotta run. And there's a place in the sun, and before my life is done, I gotta find me a place in the sun. Like an old dusty road, I get weary from the load, but I keep moving on. I keep moving on. Like this tired, troubled earth, I've been rolling since my birth, but I keep moving on. I keep moving on. Y'all know why? Because there's a place in the sun where there's home for everyone, where my poor restless heart has got to run. And there's a place in the sun, and before your life is done, you've got to find you your place in the sun. Oh, we've got to find us our place in the sun. Thank you.